Hi guys, welcome to a new episode. Today we're going to talk about linear fields built from 4 strokes played by our hands and 2 strokes played by with our kicks, or the other way around, so 4 strokes played with our kicks and 2 strokes played with our hands. So it's a linear field based on 6 strokes. Let's start seeing how the basic idea and the probably most used idea of these linear sounds, and let's understand how we can use this and how we can break this down to learn it, and how many different then stickings and variations we can use. Okay, so this is playing 4 strokes with our hand and 2 strokes with our kick. This type of linear is very good because it allows you to speed it up a lot, still have a good volume and dynamic, and gives that feeling of speed whenever we're playing something fast, still resting, because it has the 2 kicks that kind of breaks the 4 strokes in between the hands, so you never really get tired. And so it's a great solution, for whatever you're doing. You're playing something very fast, you're getting tired, or you want to put a feel that doesn't slow down what's happening in the song, and you can just put this in and have that feeling of, again, like something very fast. Again, it's a great feel for this reason. It's pretty simple, but we have to play it very accurately, because if not, it won't give us that feeling, that sound of something very fast, but it will be something sloppy that don't really sounds good, and it's not nice if it's not played accurately. So let's be very careful of learning it from very slow and then speed it up, keeping the notes very even and the dynamics also, so that it gives you a good feeling of a lot of notes played, instead of having the hands very loud and maybe the kick lower, which won't give that same effect. One of the aspects that we have to figure out and understand speeding this feel up is the techniques that we want to use. So there are different ways that we can play this feel, which is just when we start speeding it up, as we usually do, we shift from the bigger to smaller muscles. So we want to shift the hands work to the wrists, and not having always an arm motion. So this will be hard or harder than and the result is the same. You have the same power, and it just sounds better. So it's much easier to shift to smaller muscles, to the articulation, but also when we get to a certain speed, since it's only 4 strokes per hand, like the hands only play 4 strokes each time, we can also use, and I like to play it in this way personally, the push-pull, alternated singles push-pull. So it will give you this effect of having the push-pull is great, because it's like if you play every stroke has a lot of power. It's like, and not this kind of effect that it can happen with the just using the wrist, just using German grip. because of the space that we have between the notes. So when we play the push-pull, we know that the first stroke is going to be loud because there's the arm motion happening, and then the second stroke we still have a good, volume and a good dynamic, even if the surfaces don't have a lot of rebound. That's because it's only 4 strokes, so there isn't the time to. There's a lot of rebound from the first stroke because we can involve the arm a little bit, in just letting the stick fall, and that will give a lot of rebound. And so then we can close the hand and have the second stroke very, very loud still. And of course, if we would still go on doing this in singles, then probably the dynamic will go lower and lower, and we will lose the initial energy that we create with the arm motion of the first stroke. Okay, so are the techniques that I like to use to play this kind of feel. So either just German shifting to the wrist, or push-pull playing. Instead with the feet, we can either play double strokes with one foot. I personally use the slide technique to play the double strokes because it gives a lot of power and volume to the second stroke. And I like that better than heel toe or other techniques to play the double strokes. That's just my personal, choice. But you can also use the double pedal or double bass drum and just play kind of a phlegm between the 2 strokes. So that will also, of course, give a lot of power. It's maybe a little bit harder to have the notes all perfectly even, but practicing will just make it perfect. So you can just practice in both ways, or one of the 2 ways that you prefer. Another way to play this is playing 4 strokes with our feet and then 2 strokes with our hands. So something like. So also here, it's the same effect. Maybe it's this one is a little bit harder to coordinate because it's easier to play 4 strokes with your hands rather than with your feet. But same concept. So just practicing it, you will master it. Also here, when I play this slow, of course I use the bigger muscles, so leg motion and arms. The more I speed this up, the more I shift to ankles. So same thing as before, figuring out the technique. I really use only arm motion with my hands because it's just gonna be 2 notes each time. But instead with my feet, I will shift from legs to ankle motion. Of course, in both cases, you can become very creative and shift, move your hands around and have different sounds. Instead of just playing, each time on each thumb or both hands on the same surface. So you could create variations like this. Okay, so there are many solutions already that you can use. Same thing with your feet. You can either use other stuff on your feet or just move your hands on top of that, so creating something like this. Okay, the options are limited with only 2 strokes. But still, you can become creative and add this with other linears that you're doing and stuff like that. So expanding your vocabulary, playing using only one sticking and one lick. So it's very good to have one thing and have more solutions so that you can keep changing and stop and not repeating yourself too much. Another way that we can change this is to play, for example, change the sticking completely. So for example, playing hand, foot, hand, foot, hand, hand, or foot, hand, foot, foot. So something like this. Okay, and also here we can shift this around the kit to create other sounds. So something like this. Okay, so also here the technique that we can apply to play this is since all the notes are pretty separated from each other, you can use bigger muscles even if you're playing very fast without having to go too much into technique. The hard thing, of course, is to play the notes even and keep a good sound when you speed this up. So put the main of focus on that, but it's good to learn a sticking and then have that tools. Is like learning a word for your vocabulary or a sentence that you can use every once in a while when you're playing something in between something, and you can alternate. And we already have 4 different solutions, 4 different stickings playing on the same amount of notes, and from these 4 solutions we can find another, at least another 12 or 16 solutions, changing the sounds, changing where we're going to position and what we're going to hit. Now let's understand how to hear the 6 strokes in a 4 measure, in a 4/4 measure, so that we know based on how we start how the fill ends and how we keep control of one. So the first sticking is going to basically be, so pretty easy because we end with the 4 and then we're going to be back on 1. So how I think of this is I play 3 times the 4 notes with my hands, so, and I'm back on 1. So okay, so pretty easy. Instead, if we start with the 2 strokes with the kick, it's going to be, so it's going to be, I think it as 3 times playing the kick, and then I will have to play half of the 3rd part with your hands. So it's, so I know it's going to be 2/4, 2/4, 2/2, 1. So okay, so it's pretty easy. And of course, if you want to work on this and play this in 8 measures, in 8 measures instead of 4, or another time frame, you can easily practice it in this way, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and understanding where the accents fall, and so you know how to start and how to finish. Same thing with the other sticking. So it's going to be, so we can end this in 2 ways, either playing double strokes with the kick and be on one with the kick, or having, you know, the snare drum on one. So if we put it in a groove, it will be like. Or if we start with this with the kick, it's going to sound like this. Okay, so putting it in a groove, it will be. Okay, so now you have these new solutions that you can practice on and have fun with. Just remember to keep the notes even while you play this kind of the fills. Pay attention to the dynamics to have the right effect for this fill. If not, it won't sound as good as it should. Start slowly and then speed it up, paying attention to the technique so that you don't get stiff, but you keep a nice and even sound. Remember how every solution starts and ends, so that you have perfect control of everything in different measures. So it's 4/4, 6/4, 2 bars of 4/4, whatever you guys need. The more you know, of course, the better it is, the more you will be able to control this type of feel, because of course having 6 strokes in a 4/4 bar can be kind of odd, so we have to make sure we know that. And yeah, it's great to have all these solutions and to be able to be creative with the same sticking on or the same concept. So have fun with it, have a good practice, and I'll see you next time.